A poor girl saves a man at the foot of the mountain unaware. He's a billionaire and changes her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Today's story is titled, A Poor Girl Saves a Man at the Foot of the Mountain. Unaware, he's a billionaire and changes her life. It all began on a foggy afternoon at the base of Mount Ashfield, a quiet stretch of wilderness in the Pacific Northwest, where the air smelled like pine and cold earth. The wind carried a low hum through the trees, and the mist hung so thick it blurred the line between mountain and sky. Lila Evans adjusted the woven basket on her back, her hands numb from the chill. She'd been out since dawn, foraging for wild herbs her late mother once used to make salves and teas for the locals. Her jeans were torn at the knee, boots scuffed from the rocky trails, and her jacket faded brown corduroy barely kept the cold away. Every dollar she made selling herbs at the weekend market went toward the rent of her small cabin and her younger brother's school fees. She was exhausted, but the forest was her only means to survive. As she climbed over a moss-covered rock, a sound broke the rhythm of the wind, a shout, faint but sharp, echoing from below. Her pulse quickened. "Hello?" she called out, her voice swallowed by the fog. Then again, more desperate this time, a man's cry for help. She dropped her basket and ran toward the sound, her boots slipping against the damp ground. The path narrowed, winding around a steep slope until she saw him, a man lying near the riverbed, half conscious, his leg pinned beneath a fallen branch. His dark coat was torn, his face pale against the gray mud. Without hesitation, Lila knelt beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man's lips parted, his breath shallow. "Help, please don't move," she said quickly, scanning the branch. It was heavy but not impossible. She braced her shoulder against it and pushed, her arms trembling with effort. "Come on, move!" The wood shifted just enough for her to pull his leg free. He groaned in pain, clutching at his thigh. Lila ripped the hem of her flannel shirt, wrapping it tightly around the wound. "You'll be fine, okay? You're gonna be fine." Her voice shook, but her hands were steady. She remembered her mother's words. Asterisk. When someone's in need, don't think, just act. Asterisk. She took off her own jacket and draped it over him. The mountain air was biting, the temperature dropping fast, but she didn't care. His breathing evened out, slow and fragile. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Ah, Adrian," he murmured. "All right, Adrian, don't sleep, stay with me." She glanced up the slope. No cell service, no cars, no one in sight. The nearest ranger station was miles away. She had to move him. Using a fallen branch as a makeshift crutch, she helped him lean against her shoulder. He was taller than she expected, heavier too, but she pressed on step by step through the mud. Her breath came in ragged bursts, heart pounding with fear that he'd collapse again. After what felt like forever, they reached a small wooden shelter she used to store herbs. She eased him onto the floor, started a fire with dry moss and matches from her pocket, and sat beside him, rubbing her hands together for warmth. His pulse was weak but steady. She dipped a cloth in the warm water she boiled and cleaned the cut on his leg. "You're lucky I was nearby," she muttered, half to herself. "If the cold didn't get you, the wolves would have." He managed a faint smile, eyes flickering open. "You're kind, just stubborn," she replied, tucking the blanket tighter around him. For a long while, the only sound was the crackle of fire and the rain against the roof. Lila studied his face, the sharp jawline, the watch still strapped to his wrist, cracked but unmistakably expensive. Whoever he was, he didn't belong here. But she didn't ask. Some questions could wait until morning. Outside, the fog thickened, wrapping the mountain in silence. Inside the small cabin, a poor girl watched over a stranger, unaware that the man she had just saved wasn't a lost traveler but one of the richest men in the country, and the reason her life would never be the same again. When dawn broke over Mount Ashfield, the fog still clung to the ground like a ghost that refused to leave. Lila woke to the soft crackle of dying embers and the faint sound of birds hidden in the trees. Her back ached from sleeping on the wooden floor, but her first instinct was to check the stranger she had rescued. Adrian was still asleep, his breathing steady, his face a little less pale than the night before. She touched his forehead gently. Warm, not feverish. Relief slipped through her chest. "You made it through the night," she whispered. The small shelter smelled of smoke, damp earth, and herbs, drying from the rafters. She poured water into a tin cup, the only one she owned, and stirred in crushed mint leaves. When Adrian stirred awake, she handed it to him carefully. "Drink. It will help with the pain." He blinked at her, disoriented, his voice hoarse. "Where am I?" "You are in my mother's old hut," she said softly. "You fell near the river. Your leg was bleeding. I patched it up the best I could." He looked around, confusion flickering into gratitude. "You saved me." She smiled faintly, brushing dirt from her sleeve. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," he said, shaking his head. "Most people would have walked away." Lila did not answer. She focused on tending the small fire, feeding it broken branches. The morning light spilled through the cracks in the walls, touching the edges of his torn jacket. She noticed again the elegant watch on his wrist, the kind she had only seen in magazines. He caught her glance and turned the wrist inward as if embarrassed. "You should go to a hospital," she said. "The town is about 12 miles down the road. I can help you get there once the fog clears." "You have done enough already," he replied, trying to sit up, but wincing from pain. "I do not want to burden you." "It is not a burden," she said, standing to check the bandage. "But you are not walking anywhere on that leg today." Her voice carried quiet authority, the kind that made him obey without argument. The hours passed slowly. She made a small soup from mountain vegetables and a handful of rice. Adrian ate quietly, watching her move with the ease of someone who had long accepted hardship. When she caught him staring, he said, "You live here alone?" "Just me," she said, stirring the pot. "My brother stays in town with a friend while he studies. I sell herbs and salves at the market. It is not much, but it keeps us alive." Her words were simple, without self-pity, and that humility struck him more deeply than he expected. "You deserve more than this," he said under his breath. "Everyone deserves a fair chance." She gave a small laugh. "Fair does not grow on trees out here." By midday, the fog began to lift. Adrian looked stronger, though his leg still ached. He asked for a stick to lean on, but Lila refused. "You will rest until I find someone to help carry you down. The trail is too steep." She wrapped another layer of cloth around his wound. As she worked, their hands brushed. He felt a spark of warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Her eyes lifted to meet his, brown and bright like the earth after rain. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then, as if afraid of what silence might reveal, she stepped back and reached for her basket. "I will go find help," she said quickly. "Do not move." "Lila," he said, surprising himself by saying her name. She froze at the doorway. "Thank you," he added quietly, "for everything." She smiled, just a hint of it, then disappeared into the mist. Adrian lay back, staring at the wooden ceiling. Every breath hurt, but there was a different kind of ache now, one that had nothing to do with his leg. He thought about her hands, rough from work yet gentle, about the way she had not asked for anything in return, about the truth he could not tell her that he was Adrian Holt, billionaire founder of Holt Energy, whose name she would have recognized from any news channel. But in this cabin, he was just a man who owed his life to a stranger. As the sound of her footsteps faded, he whispered to the empty room, "Who are you, Lila Evans?" The wind answered through the cracks of the wall, carrying the scent of pine and the echo of a promise neither of them yet understood. The sun was already high when Lila reached the base of the trail, her boots caked with mud and her breath coming in sharp bursts. She found old Mr. Carter, the forest warden, loading wood into his truck near the ranger outpost. He looked up in surprise when she stumbled toward him. "Lila Evans, what on earth happened to you?" he asked, setting down an axe. "There is a man hurt up the ridge," she said between breaths. "He fell near the river bend. His leg is bad, but he is alive." The old man frowned, wiping sweat from his brow. "No one should be hiking up there this time of year. The trail is dangerous." "Please," she pleaded, "we need to get him to town." Within minutes they were bouncing up the rocky path in his truck, carrying a small stretcher and first aid kit. By the time they reached the hut again, Adrian had managed to sit up by the fire. His eyes softened when he saw her return. "You came back," he said, voice rough but relieved. "I told you I would," she replied, kneeling beside him. Mr. Carter inspected the wound, whistling low. "You are lucky, son. Another hour in the cold, and you would have been done for." They lifted Adrian carefully onto the stretcher, and as the truck rolled down the mountain road, he He stared out the window at the passing trees. Lila sat beside him, holding the edge of the stretcher steady. Every bump made him wince, but he kept his eyes on her, the corner of his mouth curving into a faint smile. "I never got to thank you properly," he said. "You already did." "No," he whispered, "not enough." When they reached the small clinic in town, Lila helped the nurses settle him in. The doctor cleaned the wound and wrapped it in proper gauze. While they worked, she waited in the hallway, her hands folded tight, unsure why she felt nervous. When she peeked in again, Adrian was sitting up, talking quietly to the doctor. The faint light from the window caught his features strong, composed, and oddly familiar, as though she had seen his face somewhere before. But she shook the thought away. When the doctor left, Adrian looked at her. "You should rest," she said. "You have done more than enough for a stranger." "Maybe," she replied, "but strangers are just friends we have not met yet." He smiled, a slow, genuine one that softened the tension in the air. "I owe you my life, Lila Evans. At least let me buy you dinner once I can walk again." She laughed. "I do not think you will find many fine restaurants here. Just the diner near the square, and they close by 9. "Then the diner it is," he said. "It is a promise." 2 days later, Adrian was discharged. The bandage around his leg was thick, but he could stand with a cane. He found her at the market, sorting herbs into small glass jars. The scent of mint and pine filled the air. "You should be resting," she said, startled to see him. "I could not stay still," he admitted. "Besides, I wanted to see my hero again." She blushed faintly, pretending to focus on her jars. "I am no hero. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Maybe," he said, leaning on the cane, "but maybe fate brought us to the same mountain for a reason." His tone was playful, but there was something deeper behind it. She smiled despite herself. "You talk like someone who reads too many novels." "I do not read enough," he replied. "Too much work, too little life." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind of work keeps you that busy?" He hesitated, glancing down. "Consulting," he said vaguely. "Energy development projects." It was not a lie, but not the whole truth either. She nodded slowly. "Sounds important." "Sometimes," he said softly, "but lately it feels empty." Before she could answer, the sound of a delivery truck echoed through the market. The driver leaned out calling, "Evans! The order for Mrs. Perry's medicine." Lila excused herself to sign the receipt. And when she turned back, Adrian was studying the wooden carvings on her stall little animals made by her brother. He picked one up, a carved mountain bear, its paint faded. "Did you make this?" "My brother did," she said. "He sells them to tourists. It helps pay his tuition." Adrian placed the bear back gently, his expression unreadable. "He is lucky to have you." "No," she said, shaking her head. "I am lucky to still have him." The wind picked up, rustling the tarp above them. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth, the same flannel she had torn to bind his leg. It had been washed, folded neatly. "I kept this," he said. "A reminder that kindness still exists." Her eyes softened. "You did not have to return it." "I did," he said quietly, "because I am coming back here again." She looked at him, puzzled. "Back here?" He smiled. "The kind that hid more than it revealed. Let us just say I have business in this town. Maybe next time, dinner at that diner?" Before she could reply, his driver appeared at the edge of the market, a black SUV waiting in the distance. She watched as Adrian limped toward it, confusion flickering through her mind. No one in this town arrived in cars like that. As the vehicle disappeared down the road, Lila's fingers brushed the folded flannel in her hand, the faint scent of cedar still clinging to it. For the first time, she wondered if the man she had saved was more than just a lost traveler. 2 weeks passed before Lila saw him again. The market had just opened for the weekend when a sleek black SUV pulled up by the square. The driver stepped out first, followed by Adrian, this time walking without a cane. He looked different now, clean-shaven, dressed in a tailored navy coat and polished boots that did not belong to mountain mud. The crowd seemed to take notice, but he ignored the stares, heading straight for her stall. "You look better," she said with a small smile, pretending not to notice the car or the suit. "You make recovery look easy." "It was not easy," he said, "but I had good motivation." He set a small paper bag on her counter. Inside was a box of herbal ointments, the same kind she used for customers. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said. "I visited the clinic again. The doctor said your treatment helped prevent infection. You might have saved more than my leg." She blushed, glancing down at her hands. You already thanked me. Not enough, he said. So I came to keep my promise. She looked up, confused. Promise? Dinner, he reminded her. You said the diner closes at 9? I am hoping to make it before that. Her laughter broke the tension. You actually remembered? I remember everything about that night, he said softly. The sincerity in his tone made her heartbeat stumble. All right, she said finally. One dinner, but I am not dressing fancy. Neither am I, he said, though his coat said otherwise. That evening they met at the diner, the kind of place with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that only played half the songs it was supposed to. Lila sat across from him, feeling out of place under the warm glow of the lights. The waitress brought 2 cups of coffee, and Adrian smiled as he watched her wrap her fingers around the mug for warmth. So, she said, what brings a man like you to our mountains anyway? Do not tell me you were hiking for fun. He hesitated. I was visiting a project site. My company is working on renewable energy. I came to see it myself. Things did not go as planned. Clearly, she said amused. Next time, bring better shoes. Next time I will bring you as my guide, he replied. Her smile softened. Careful, I might take you up on that. They ate simple food-grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and apple pie. For Lila, it was the first meal she had not cooked herself in months. For Adrian, it was the first meal in years that did not feel like another business obligation. After dinner, they stepped outside into the cool night air. The town square was quiet, the street lamps glowing amber. He looked at her with a warmth she did not understand yet. You are not what I expected, he said. And what did you expect, she asked. Someone who would ask for something in return, he admitted. Money, help, a favor. Not everyone helps for a reason, she said simply. Sometimes we just do what is right. That is rare, he said. Then maybe you have been around the wrong people, she replied, smiling faintly. He laughed softly, but his gaze lingered on her a moment too long. She looked away, pretending to adjust her scarf. You should head back, she said. It is a long drive to wherever you came from. Maybe I am not leaving, he said. There is still work to finish here. Work? I plan to expand the project near the foothills, he said carefully. And I could use someone who knows the land, the people, the herbs. She stared at him. You are serious? Completely, he said. I would pay you fairly. You would not have to hike every day just to get by. I cannot, she said quickly. My brother's school, the market, it is my life. Think about it, he said gently. It does not have to be forever. She hesitated, then nodded. Maybe, she whispered. He smiled, knowing that maybe was enough. When they parted, he watched her walk away under the fading streetlights, her shadow long against the pavement. In the distance, the mountains loomed dark and familiar. Adrian stood there for a while, listening to the wind rustle through the pines, feeling something stir in him that he had not felt in years' hope. That night, as he sat in the back of his car, his assistant handed him a tablet filled with emails and schedules, but he waved it away. On the screensaver was the company logo Holt Energy. The reflection of his face stared back at him. He touched the glass, remembering the firelight, the flannel bandage, and her eyes. For once, the billionaire did not think about profit or deadlines. He thought about a girl with dirt on her boots who had saved his life and had no idea who he really was. Over the following month, life in the small mountain town began to shift in quiet, unexpected ways. The townspeople noticed new survey markers placed along the foothills and strangers in hard hats examining the terrain. Rumors spread that a new company was moving in to build something big, but no one knew what or who was behind it. Lila did not think much of it until one morning when she returned from the forest to find a white envelope slipped under her cabin door. Inside was a letter printed on thick paper, embossed with a silver crest that read, Holt Energy Initiative. Her brow furrowed. The message was simple. We are seeking local experts familiar with regional flora for a sustainable energy and restoration project. Compensation provided. Please contact the field office by Friday. At the bottom was a handwritten note in neat, precise strokes. I told you I would need your help. Adrian. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the letter. The thought of working for him, whoever he truly was, stirred something complicated in her chest. Part of her wanted to stay in her safe, familiar routine. Another part wanted to see what lay beyond the boundaries of her small life. The next day, she walked to the temporary field office near the edge of town. Inside, men and women in safety vests reviewed blueprints while screens displayed maps of the valley. And there he was, standing at the center of it all, dressed in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, talking to an engineer. He turned and saw her immediately. "You came?" he said, a smile lighting his face. "I said maybe," she replied, clutching the letter, "but I did not expect this." "This," he said, gesturing around, "is just the beginning. We are building a solar and hydro-hybrid station. It will bring jobs, power, and a cleaner future for this valley. You are leading all this?" she asked, disbelief in her tone. "I am," he said simply, "though I prefer working on the ground, not behind a desk." He showed her a section of land on the map. "We need to protect the native plants here during construction. You know this terrain better than anyone. I need your help to create a preservation plan." She hesitated. "Why me?" "You could hire a team from the city." "Because they do not care about this place like you do," he said softly. "And I trust you." The sincerity in his voice left her speechless. Against her better judgment, she agreed. The weeks that followed were a blur of long hikes, data sheets, and endless questions about soil and sunlight. Adrian worked beside her often, learning from her, sometimes teasing her when she corrected him. There were moments of laughter that slipped past their guarded hearts, a shared thermos of coffee on a windy ridge, a quiet meal after sundown as the forest hummed around them. One afternoon, a sudden rainstorm caught them halfway down the trail. They ran for cover under a large pine, both soaked and breathless. She laughed between gasps, pushing wet hair from her face. "You should see yourself right now," she said. The great energy man defeated by the weather. "You are laughing at your boss," he said, smiling. "Technically my client," she corrected. "That makes it worse," he said, but his tone was warm. Their eyes met, and for a moment the sound of rain faded into nothing. Then she looked away quickly, her pulse quickening. "We should keep moving," she said. "The storm will pass soon." "Lila," he said quietly, "do you ever regret staying here, in this small town?" She shook her head. "This place is all I have left of my family. Regret does not change what we lose." "Maybe not," he said, "but sometimes we find something new when we least expect it." She did not answer. When the rain stopped, they continued down the path in silence, both pretending the moment had never happened. But that night, as Lila sat by her window watching the storm fade beyond the mountains, she found herself thinking about his words. Somewhere in the darkness, she knew Adrian Holt, the man she had saved at the river, was not just a stranger anymore. He was part of her story now, and whatever truth he was hiding would eventually find its way to the surface. As autumn settled over the valley, the project began to bloom into something real. Steel frames rose against the skyline, panels shimmered under the mountain sun, and the once quiet town buzzed with new life. For Lila, each day brought a mix of pride and disbelief. She had gone from gathering herbs in solitude to coordinating with engineers and environmental scientists who actually listened to her advice. But none of that compared to the feeling she got when Adrian was near. He no longer seemed like a stranger or a patient she had once rescued. He was someone who carried warmth in his words, and a quiet strength that made her want to trust him. Yet something about him still did not add up. He was too composed, too connected, too important for a man who claimed to be just a consultant. That suspicion grew stronger the day she saw the town's newspaper headline lying on the counter at the diner. The bold print read, "Billionaire philanthropist Adrian Holt expands renewable energy efforts in rural communities." Her heart stopped. The picture beneath it showed him standing beside the governor, wearing the same navy coat she had seen him wear at the market weeks earlier. She felt the world tilt slightly, the hum of the diner fading to silence. Her hands trembled as she traced his name. Adrian Holt. The man she had cooked for, worked beside, laughed with the man she thought she knew was a billionaire. That evening, when he arrived at the project site, she was waiting for him near the storage cabin. The wind carried the scent of rain, and her expression was unreadable. "You should have told me," she said quietly. He froze, the calm on his face faltering. "Lila, do not," she cut in, her voice trembling. "Do not pretend this is nothing. You let me think you were some field worker, someone like me. Why?" He took a careful step forward. "Because I wanted you to see me for who I am, not what I own. The night you saved me, you did not hesitate. You did not ask for anything. For once in my life, someone looked at me and saw a person, not a bank account." "You lied," she said, anger and hurt mingling in her eyes. All this time I thought we were working together, building something real. But it was just pity, was it not? The rich man helping the poor girl who saved him? No, he said firmly. That is not what this is. She turned away, her voice cracking. Then what is it, Adrian? Because right now it feels like another one of your projects. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. Lila, please. Everything I said to you was real. The project, the dinners, the conversations, it all mattered. You matter. You should go, she whispered. Before the rain starts. Not until you hear me, he insisted, his voice breaking through the growing wind. I kept the truth from you because I was afraid. I did not want to lose what we had. You never had it, she said, her eyes glistening. You cannot build honesty on a lie. The first drops of rain began to fall, soft but steady, soaking the dirt between them. Adrian stood there, helpless, as she turned and walked away down the gravel path, her figure fading into the mist just as she had appeared the day they met. He remained there long after she was gone, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead, his heart heavier than the storm around him. Later that night, he sat alone in his office, surrounded by glass walls and city lights far from the mountains. On his desk lay the flannel cloth she had once torn to save his life. He picked it up, running his thumb over the frayed edges, the memory of her voice echoing in his mind. You cannot build honesty on a lie. For the first time in years, the billionaire who could solve any problem realized there was one thing his power could not fix: the pain of losing the only person who had ever treated him like he was human. And in that moment, Adrian Holt made a silent promise to himself. If there was any way to earn her forgiveness, he would find it, no matter what it took. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between them stretched wider than the valley itself. Lila returned to her quiet life in the cabin, tending her herbs, avoiding the project site, and pretending that everything was back to normal. But nothing felt the same. The once comforting silence of the forest now echoed with the weight of everything left unsaid. Each morning she saw the construction lights glowing faintly from the foothills, a constant reminder of him and the truth she could not unhear. Meanwhile, in the city, Adrian threw himself into work with mechanical precision. He attended meetings, signed contracts, smiled for cameras, but every handshake felt hollow. His assistant, Marcus, noticed the change. You have not been back to Ashfield, Marcus said one evening, placing a stack of reports on the desk. You should. The press loves that project. Adrian shook his head. It is not about the press. Then what is it about? Marcus asked. Adrian stared out the window at the skyline glittering in the dark. It is about a promise I broke, he said quietly. Marcus hesitated, then asked, You mean the girl? Adrian did not answer, but his silence was enough. That night, long after everyone had left, Adrian opened the project files again. He scrolled through the photos, forests, rivers, the hut she had saved him in. His gaze lingered on a shot of Lila standing beside the field team, her hair tied back, her smile faint but real. He remembered the way she looked at him before she knew who he was, and how her voice had trembled when she told him to go. The memory cut deeper than any wound. The next morning, Adrian made a decision. He called his board of directors and announced that he was returning to Ashfield permanently to oversee the final phase of construction. They were surprised billionaires did not manage sites themselves, but he did not care. A week later, the black SUV pulled into the mountain town once more. The townspeople stared as he stepped out, dressed simply this time in jeans and a work jacket, no entourage, no press. He went first to the local community center where he found the new director signing papers. You are back, the man said. We did not expect that. I left too many things unfinished, Adrian replied, especially one that matters most. From there, he walked the winding path that led to her cabin. The sky was gray, and smoke drifted gently from her chimney. His heart pounded as he approached the door, unsure what he would say or if she would even let him speak. When she opened the door, surprise flashed across her face, followed by a guarded calm. Adrian, she said, his name carrying both warmth and ache. What are you doing here? I came to see you, he said, and to tell you the truth, every piece of it. She crossed her arms, cautious. You already did that. The whole world knows who you are. They know my name, he said softly. But you know me. She hesitated, her expression unreadable. What do you want from me? Forgiveness, he said simply, and maybe a chance to prove that I meant everything I said. Lila sighed, glancing past him at the trees swaying in the wind. You do not understand. It is not that simple. You have a whole world out there, Adrian. I do not belong in it. Then I will bring my world here, he said. The foundation, the project, all of it. I am building it for people like you, for places like this. You changed how I see everything. You made me remember what it means to care without expectation. His voice was quiet but steady. You showed me who I want to be. Her eyes softened for a moment before she looked away. Words are easy, she said. Actions are harder. Then I will show you, he said. Just give me time. She studied him for a long moment, the man who had once been her stranger in the woods now standing on her doorstep as a billionaire stripped of all pretense. Time, she repeated. That is all I can give. That is all I need, he whispered. As he turned to leave, the clouds broke slightly, letting sunlight spill across the ridge. Lila watched him walk down the path, her heart conflicted but lighter than it had been in weeks. Maybe she was not ready to forgive him yet, but part of her wanted to believe that the man she had saved on that foggy afternoon was still the same one standing in front of her now, just a man trying to make things right. Winter came early to the valley that year, blanketing the mountain in white and stillness. The town buzzed with talk of the new solar hydro station nearing completion, but for Lila, the days moved quietly. She kept busy with her herbs and the small community clinic where she volunteered on weekends, trying not to think of the man who had once turned her life upside down. Yet, he was everywhere. His name appeared in local news. His company trucks passed through town. And the townspeople spoke his name with a mix of gratitude and awe. Adrian Holt had promised to bring change, and he was keeping that promise. But she had not seen him since the day he appeared at her door. That changed on a cold morning in December when a letter arrived with her name printed neatly on the front. It bore no logo this time, only a wax seal marked with the letter H. Inside, the message was handwritten. Dear Lila, I know words cannot undo what I hid from you, but perhaps this can show you what I meant. If you have the time, come to the foothill bridge at sunset. Adrian. She stared at the letter for a long time before finally deciding to go. The sun was dipping low when she reached the bridge that overlooked the valley. To her surprise, the once barren land beneath it had transformed. Rows of solar panels now glistened under the fading light, and near the center stood a small building made of wood and glass. A sign was mounted on the front, the Lila Evans Environmental Research Center. Her breath caught. For a moment she could not move. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Adrian stood there, dressed in a dark coat, his expression calm but his eyes searching hers. You built this? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. We built this, he corrected softly. You were the heart of this project, even when you did not know it. The preservation plans you wrote inspired the design. I wanted to make sure the community knew the name of the person who cared enough to protect this land. You named it after me, she said, disbelief in her tone. You did not have to do that. I did, he said. Because I needed to show you that this was never about guilt or debt. It is about gratitude and respect. She turned to face him fully, the wind tugging at her scarf. You think a building can fix what you broke? No, he said quietly. But it can stand as proof that I listened, that I changed because of you. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When he unfolded it, she gasped. It was the same flannel she had used to bind his wound months ago, now framed behind clear glass with the words etched beneath it. To the woman who saved my life and taught me what it means to live with purpose. You kept it, she said, her voice trembling. I kept everything, he admitted. The flannel, the memory of that night, the way you looked at me when you thought I was no one. That moment changed everything for me. She blinked back tears, unsure what to say. Why are you showing me this now? Because the project is finished, he said. But my life still feels unfinished without you in it. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the whisper of wind through the pines. You do not owe me anything, she said. I never wanted your money or your empire. And I never wanted your forgiveness out of pity, he replied. I just wanted a chance to earn back your trust. His sincerity broke through the wall she had built. Lila looked at the research center again, her name glinting softly in the fading light. It was more than a grand gesture, it was a promise, carved into the very foundation of the place she had fought to protect. She turned back to him. You did not have to do this for me, she said. I did it for us, he answered. For what started on that mountain. For what could still be. For the first time in months, she smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. You really are stubborn, she said. Only when something is worth fighting for, he replied. The sun dipped below the ridge, painting the sky in gold and rose. And for the first time, standing there on that bridge, they both felt like they were exactly where they were meant to be. Spring arrived gently, washing the valley in green once more. The snow melted from the peaks, the rivers ran clear, and life returned to Mount Ashfield as if winter's silence had been nothing more than a long-held breath. The research center that bore Lila's name opened its doors to the public that season. Children from the town came to see the solar garden and the exhibits about native herbs and conservation. Lila stood at the entrance in a modest white dress, watching with quiet pride as the people she grew up with explored the place she once only dreamed of helping to build. Behind her, Adrian greeted the guests, no longer hiding behind titles or suits. He looked lighter, freer, as if the mountain had taught him how to breathe again. When the crowd finally thinned, he walked toward her, his hands tucked into his coat pockets. "You did this," he said softly. "We did this," she corrected, smiling. "You built the walls. I just filled them with plants." "And purpose," he added. "You gave this place meaning." They walked through the corridor together, the afternoon sunlight spilling through the glass walls. The framed flannel hung near the main exhibit, the same piece of cloth that had once held him together. Lila paused in front of it, her fingers brushing the edge of the glass. "It feels strange," she said. "All of this started because of one accident." "Not an accident," he said gently, a moment that changed two lives. She turned to him, her eyes soft. "And what happens now?" Adrian smiled, reaching into his pocket. "Now," he said, "we stop pretending we were only meant to cross paths once." He held out a small velvet box. Lila blinked, her heart racing. "Adrian, I am not asking you to live in my world," he said. "I am asking to build one with you." When he opened the box, a simple silver ring rested inside, engraved with a mountain peak and a small line of words. "The moment you saved me, I already belonged to you." Her breath caught, tears welling in her eyes. "You kept saying you would show me, not just tell me," she whispered. "And I meant it," he said. "You showed me what honesty looks like, what courage feels like. You made me remember what matters. So now I am showing you what forever means." The air between them was quiet except for the wind whispering through the open doors. Lila laughed softly through her tears. "You know I am terrible at saying yes quickly." "That is all right," he said with a grin. "I can wait. I have waited this long." She looked down at the ring, then at him, the man who had once been a stranger bleeding by the river, the man who had lied, stumbled, and learned to be better. "I am not perfect, Adrian," she said. "Neither am I," he replied. "But together, we are real." She smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. "Then yes," she whispered. "Yes." The crowd, gathered quietly near the entrance, erupted into applause as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The sound of laughter and music filled the valley as the celebration began. Later that evening, when the lights of the center glowed softly under the stars, Lila and Adrian stood on the balcony overlooking the mountains. The wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "It reminds me that sometimes fate hides its greatest gifts in moments that feel like disasters." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "You mean the day you nearly got yourself killed?" "The day you saved my life," he corrected, smiling, "and taught me how to live it." Below them, the valley shimmered under the night sky, alive with hope. The camera of time pulled back, leaving the image of two people standing side by side, no longer the poor girl and the billionaire, but two souls who had found each other at the foot of a mountain and built a future that no storm could wash away.